Welcome, the Lord's chosen. They don't hate you because you did something wrong. They hate you because you did something they couldn't. Let's be honest. The very existence of a chosen one is like a glitch in people's emotional software. You walk into a room and suddenly their confidence starts buffering. You didn't even say a word, but somehow their ego catches Wi-Fi and starts malfunctioning. There's something about your presence, that quiet conviction, that unbothered glow, that spiritual Wi-Fi signal they can't connect to, that makes people itch with unexplained hostility. Psychologists call it involuntary comparison response. When someone sees a person operating at a level they secretly crave, their brain doesn't say be inspired, it says be offended. That's the science behind envy. It's admiration that mutated because pride refused to admit it. And here's the twist. Most of your haters don't even dislike you personally. They dislike the mirror you unknowingly hold up to their wasted potential. You trigger what they've ignored in themselves. They want your confidence, your clarity, your calm under chaos, but they can't mimic it, so they mock it. You're not walking around trying to be special. You just stopped pretending to be average. And that quiet rebellion burns their soul like sunlight on a vampire. They'll tell others you think you're better, but what they really mean is, you remind me I could have been better too. So today we're not going to tiptoe around the truth. We're diving straight into the brutal psychology and divine irony of why you, the chosen one, make your haters so irrationally mad. Buckle up, because this isn't about arrogance. It's about understanding why your very existence challenges everything they've built their illusions on. Number one, you mirror the life they refuse to build. There's a specific kind of discomfort you create without even trying, the kind that forces people to face their own reflection. Haters don't usually start out hating you. They start out recognizing something familiar in you. They see their dreams, their once bright ambition, their buried potential, all living, breathing, and moving inside you. The difference is you acted on what they only talked about. You did what they were too afraid to begin, and that success feels personal to them, even though it has nothing to do with them. You became living proof that it could have been done, and that's the kind of evidence that burns the ego alive. Because if you did it, with your flaws, your setbacks, your mistakes, then they have no excuse left for why they didn't. That's what drives their anger. It's not jealousy in the cartoon sense. It's resentment at being exposed. You're a walking reminder that comfort zones have consequences. Every time you rise, it whispers to their conscience, you could have done the same. And what makes it worse? You make it look possible. You're not unreachable. You're relatable. They can't dismiss your success as luck because they watched the process. They saw the struggle, the doubt, the grind. You didn't skip steps. You just refused to stop climbing. That's why they can't stand it. You remind them of what they gave up on when things got hard. But here's the twist. You're not trying to prove anything to them. You're just evolving. And that evolution, that refusal to stay stuck, threatens their entire identity. Because if you keep growing, they can no longer justify staying stagnant. So they'll mock, gossip, and minimize, not to destroy you, but to protect the version of themselves that refuses accountability. That's why your existence alone stings them. You didn't ruin their peace. You revealed their complacency. And deep down, they know it. You didn't steal anything from them. You just built what they abandoned. And now every success of yours becomes a mirror they can't bear to look into. Number two, your energy makes their masks slip. There's something about your presence that disrupts the performance people put on. You walk into a space and suddenly, the ones pretending to be confident start fidgeting. The ones faking kindness become defensive, and the ones used to controlling others lose their rhythm. It's not because you're loud or imposing. It's because your energy is real. Authenticity has a way of stripping pretense, and your energy doesn't tolerate anything fake. You don't even have to say much. Your peace alone exposes what's pretended around you. People who live behind masks feel safest around confusion, chaos, and manipulation. But when someone like you shows up, someone who sees through layers without trying, they feel naked in their own disguise. They can't hide behind charm or titles because your intuition picks up on frequency, not words. Your calm doesn't match their drama, and that irritates them. To them, your stillness feels like judgment, even when you're just existing. What truly gets under their skin is that they can't control how you perceive them. You don't fall for their emotional tricks, their exaggerated stories, or their victim narratives. You hear what's not being said, and that makes them uneasy. People who depend on manipulation need an audience that believes them. But you don't play along, and your quiet detachment threatens the illusion they work hard to maintain. That's why some people suddenly turn cold, defensive, or hostile without reason. It's not that you did something wrong. It's that your truth disrupts their comfort zone. Your authenticity exposes what's artificial. Your honesty reveals where others are hiding. And when masks start slipping, egos panic. They project, they gossip, they twist narratives, anything to avoid admitting that they feel seen. You didn't come to expose anyone. You just stopped dimming your energy. But when your light enters the room, it doesn't just brighten, it reveals. And those who have built their identity on illusion can't stand being unmasked by someone who simply walks in truth. Number 3, you found freedom in places they stayed trapped. People often assume everyone wants freedom, but that's not true. Most people want comfort dressed up as freedom. They want control, familiarity, and predictability, even if it keeps them small. You, on the other hand, learned how to be free in places that were meant to confine you. You learned how to grow in conditions that were supposed to break you. And that's what separates you from those who secretly resent you. They watched you walk through the same pain they complained about, but you came out with peace instead of bitterness. You turned your wounds into wisdom. You turned your limitations into leverage. They stayed stuck in cycles of blame and excuses, while you kept finding purpose in your pressure. That's what makes them angry. You didn't wait for the situation to change before changing yourself. You didn't need permission to evolve. You found meaning where they only saw misery, and that's a level of power that terrifies people who need external validation to move forward. They remember how broken you were, how impossible things looked for you. They remember because they were there too. Only difference is you didn't stay there. You refused to let pain define you. You used it as raw material for transformation. That's why they talk down on your progress. Not because you don't deserve it, but because your growth exposes their refusal to grow. You're living proof that they didn't need to stay stuck. Freedom isn't a location, it's a decision. You made that decision long before the situation improved. You broke mental chains they're still trying to decorate. You learned how to breathe in tight spaces, how to move when everything told you to stand still. And now, your peace irritates their chaos. They're still fighting battles that no longer exist, while you're creating life beyond survival. That's what truly burns them, not your success, but your liberation. You walked out of the same cage they convinced themselves couldn't be opened. And now every time they see you living, it reminds them that they were the ones holding their own key. Number 4, you refused to play the role they wrote for you. From the beginning, people tried to cast you in a story that benefited them. They wanted you to be the one who always apologized, always settled, always stayed a little smaller so their insecurities could breathe easier. They created an image of who they thought you should be, quiet, predictable, easy to manipulate. And they treated that image like a contract. But somewhere along the line, you tore that contract in half. You stopped auditioning for roles that insulted your purpose, And that's when their admiration turned to animosity. Haters don't get angry because you failed. They get angry because you refused to fail on cue. They had the ending of your story written in their minds. You would crumble, quit, or stay under their thumb. But when you decided to rise instead, you broke the rhythm of their control. You didn't just reject their opinion, you rejected their authority over your identity. That's the moment you stopped being manageable in their world. People who feed off control panic when they can't predict you anymore. Your independence feels like rebellion to them. Your peace feels like defiance. You're no longer reacting the way they expect. No drama, no begging, no explanation. And that makes them lose the script entirely. They can't play victim when you stop playing savior. They can't play superior when you stop playing small. You dismantled the entire performance by walking off their stage, and now they're frustrated because your new version doesn't fit into their old storyline. You grew beyond their reach, and that terrifies them. The moment you started writing your own narrative, you stopped being a character in theirs. And what do they do when that happens? They complain, they twist facts, they play the victim. Anything to regain control of a story that's no longer theirs to tell. You broke free, and that freedom ruined their illusion. You're not the villain. You're just no longer their puppet. And for people who need control to feel important, your self-respect feels like betrayal. Number 5, your silence doesn't diminish you. It dismantles them. People who thrive on chaos can't survive in the presence of peace. They need reactions to feel relevant. They throw shade, spread rumors, and provoke drama not to win, but to engage you, because your attention is their validation. When you choose silence instead of retaliation, it short-circuits their strategy. They don't know how to process being ignored, because your lack of response denies them the emotional fuel they depend on. What they call you acting brand new is really just you refusing to feed dysfunction. Your silence exposes them in a way words never could. It forces them to face themselves without distraction. Every insult they hurl just echoes back at them, unanswered. And the truth is, that quiet drives them insane. They mistake your restraint for weakness, but deep down they know it's strength, because self-control is something they've never mastered. You don't need to defend what's already proven. You don't argue with noise when your peace is louder. Silence isn't passivity, it's precision. It means you've learned the difference between battles that build you and battles that drain you. You understand that not every attack deserves a reply, and not every opinion deserves an audience. When you stay calm while others expect you to crumble, it highlights how small their chaos really is. They wanted a reaction. You gave them reflection. That's power they can't manipulate. And that's what eats them up, the realization that they can't move you anymore. You used to explain yourself, defend yourself, try to prove your intentions. Now, you let truth handle the talking. Your peace has become their punishment, because it reveals how desperate their noise sounds without your energy feeding it. So when they say you've changed, they're right. You traded reaction for restraint, impulse for intention, chaos for composure. You stopped performing for people committed to misunderstanding you, and in doing so, your silence didn't just protect you, it dismantled everything fake around you. Number 6, you outgrew the version of you they could manipulate. There was a time when they could easily twist your emotions, guilt-trip you, or use your loyalty against you. And they got used to that version of you. The one who second-guessed themselves, over-explained, apologized for existing, and believed that love meant tolerance. That older version of you made their ego feel safe. You were predictable, pliable, and easy to keep beneath their influence. But growth has a way of interrupting manipulation. The day you started seeing patterns instead of promises was the day their power began to crumble. When you began healing, you stopped reacting to every emotional bait they threw your way. You stopped explaining what was already obvious. You started setting boundaries that didn't require negotiation. And that's when the energy shifted. Not because you became cold, but because you became clear. Manipulators thrive in confusion. They depend on your doubt to maintain control. Once you got clarity, they lost their leverage. You no longer sought their approval or reassurance, and that made them panic. To people who only knew how to relate to your brokenness, your wholeness feels threatening. They call you distant, arrogant, or different, when really you just stopped needing to be rescued. Your peace reminds them that their influence is gone, and rather than celebrate your healing, they resent it because it exposes the imbalance they built the relationship on. They can't stand that the emotional buttons they used to press no longer work. You didn't change overnight. You just stopped being available to dysfunction. You stopped mistaking manipulation for love. And now, every boundary you set sounds like rejection to those who benefited from your lack of them. That's why they act offended by your growth, because your evolution evicted them from a position they were never meant to occupy. They'll say you've switched up, but in truth, you just woke up. You outgrew the role they designed for your confusion. And when you started walking in self-respect, you became untouchable. Your healing wasn't just personal, it was revolutionary. Because it ended the access people only had to the version of you that didn't know their worth. Number 7, you carry proof that pain can produce power. People are comfortable when pain destroys someone. It fits their expectation of how suffering should look. What unsettles them is when you emerge from that same pain stronger, wiser, and sharper than before. You didn't let your wounds become your identity. You turned them into instruction. You learned how to use what hurt you as raw material for transformation, and that kind of resilience makes people uncomfortable. They want tragedy to leave you broken, not brilliant. But your scars became signatures of survival, undeniable proof that you mastered what was meant to master you. Most people don't actually heal. They just hide their pain and call it strength. They bury it under distractions, resentment, or pride. You did something different. You faced it. You felt it, studied it, understood it, and allowed it to shape you without shrinking you. And that process created a version of you that their ego can't compete with. You found wisdom in your wounds, and that's a language only those who've healed can speak. That's why they don't understand you anymore. You moved from survival to self-mastery, and they're still trying to get sympathy for the same story you found purpose in. Your strength bothers them because it exposes their stagnation. They had access to the same pain, but chose to stay bitter. You, on the other hand, built character where they built excuses. Every time you smile now, every time you move with peace instead of anger, it's a reminder that pain was never the end, it was the beginning. You turned your suffering into strategy, your heartbreak into awareness, your losses into lessons. They hate that you turned what could have destroyed you into direction. Your evolution is living proof that pain doesn't just hurt, it instructs. And that's what makes you powerful, because power born from pain isn't temporary, it's rooted. You earned your peace the hard way, and that's why it intimidates those who never face themselves long enough to heal. Number 8, you embody the courage. They keep postponing. There's a rare kind of courage in doing what others only talk about. Most people build their confidence on intentions, endless plans, big dreams, and promises to themselves that never leave the safety of someday. But you moved. You acted on faith instead of waiting for perfect timing. You made decisions while still uncertain, and that kind of boldness shames those who have mastered hesitation. Your courage exposed how much of their talk was just noise. You didn't wait for the fear to disappear. You learned to move through it. That's what separates you, You don't just daydream, you execute. You're willing to look foolish, fail, start over, and try again. Meanwhile, they romanticize progress, but refuse the process. They want change without the discomfort that comes with it. You're living proof that courage isn't loud. It's consistent. It's the quiet decision to keep going when no one's clapping. And that simplicity frustrates them because it reveals how much time they've wasted waiting for confidence instead of creating it. They'll mock your risks, criticize your moves, and pretend not to notice your results. But deep down, your bravery holds up a mirror to their own delay. You do what they could do, but won't. Because comfort has become their cage. They fear looking foolish, while you've learned that embarrassment is a small price for evolution. And that's what really gets to them. Your willingness to act makes their excuses look transparent. The courage you carry isn't showy, it's disciplined. You take steps they keep scheduling for after things calm down. But things never calm down. You just get stronger. Your life forces them to confront their own stagnation, and rather than admit that fear holds them hostage, they label you lucky or reckless. The truth is simpler. You just stop postponing your potential. That's why your bravery bothers them. You remind them that opportunity doesn't wait. You embody what they keep delaying, proof that courage isn't born in comfort, it's born in motion. And motion is the one thing they keep promising, but never deliver. Number 9, you don't beg for belonging. The moment you stopped chasing approval, something powerful happened. You became untouchable. People who once held emotional control over you suddenly lost their grip. Not because you fought back, but because you simply stopped needing what they were offering. They built their sense of power on your insecurity, on your desire to be liked, included, and understood. As long as you needed their validation, they could manipulate your moves. But when you finally started seeing yourself through your own eyes instead of theirs, you disrupted their entire system. Validation is currency in most relationships, and you stopped paying. That's why they got mad. They thrived on your doubt, your overthinking, your constant effort to prove your worth. You were the reliable source that fed their superiority complex. But healing cut off that supply. You learned that belonging isn't found, it's felt. It's something you carry within you, not something anyone else can grant or revoke. Once you embraced that truth, their opinions became background noise. And here's what really stings them. They can't manipulate what they can't motivate. They can't make you feel guilty, inferior, or desperate anymore, because your peace no longer depends on their permission. You learned how to walk alone without feeling lonely. You stopped mistaking acceptance for alignment. You realized that fitting in often means shrinking down, and you were done contorting yourself just to make others comfortable. Now your independence exposes their dependence on control. They'll call you cold, distant, or selfish, but that's just projection. What they really mean is, you no longer orbit around my ego. You became your own validation source, and that's emotional bankruptcy for anyone who thrived off your insecurity. You don't beg for belonging because you finally understood that real connection doesn't require compromise of self. You stopped auditioning for spaces not built to hold your truth. And that kind of confidence is unsettling to those who only feel important when someone else feels small. Number 10, you expose how loud their insecurities are. Every insult they throw, every rumor they spread, every sarcastic comment they make, it's all self-revelation. What they think is an attack is really a confession wrapped in projection. They're not describing you, they're describing the parts of themselves they can't stand. You just happen to be the mirror that reflects it back to them too clearly. Your confidence reminds them how uncertain they are. Your growth reminds them of how long they've been standing still. And because they don't want to face that truth, they try to distort your reflection instead. Insecurity hates exposure. It can only survive in comparison, gossip, and illusion. You disrupt that by simply existing without apology. When you move with self-assurance, they feel it as arrogance. When you set boundaries, they see it as rejection. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's that your stability unmasks their instability. You don't even need to defend yourself. Their reactions do it for you. Every attempt to tear you down ends up revealing how threatened they are by your presence. You see, people who are grounded don't get triggered by someone else shining. Only the insecure mistake someone else's light for their own shadow. That's why they talk about you so much. It's a desperate way to redirect attention away from what they're lacking. They can't compete with peace, so they try to create noise. They can't reach your level, so they try to stain your name. But in the end, all they really do is advertise their own envy. What they call confidence issues with you are actually confidence issues within them. You didn't create their insecurity. You exposed it. And that's the real reason they can't stop watching you, mentioning you, or misrepresenting you. You're not the problem. You're the mirror. And nothing terrifies insecure people more than seeing their unhealed reflection in someone who refuses to shrink. Number 11, you're a reminder that isolation isn't punishment, it's refinement. Most people fear being alone because they've never met themselves beyond distraction. They equate silence with emptiness and solitude with rejection. But you learned something different. You discovered that isolation wasn't the end of you, it was the making of you. When everyone left, when the noise faded, when validation went missing, you found something no crowd could give: clarity. You stopped reaching for external noise to confirm your worth and started hearing your own voice again. That's when everything shifted. They thought your quiet season would crush you. They expected you to spiral, beg for attention, or come running back to familiar chaos. But you didn't. You sat with the discomfort. You let the loneliness teach you. You learned that solitude doesn't starve you, it strengthens your spirit. You built peace from scratch, and that peace became your protection. While they were chasing constant stimulation to avoid themselves, you were in isolation, becoming someone they wouldn't recognize anymore. That's why your stillness irritates them now. They don't understand how you can be so calm without company, how you can smile without applause or move in silence without feeling unseen. It terrifies them because your contentment exposes their dependency on chaos. They need noise to feel alive. You need purpose. They need approval to feel secure. You need alignment. You're showing them that solitude isn't weakness. It's spiritual surgery. Isolation refined you. It stripped away the fake, the forced, and the fearful. It separated what was essential from what was ego. You didn't lose people. You lost illusions. And when you came out of that season, you carried something rare: unshakable peace. Now your energy is too still for the chaotic, too grounded for the unstable. They can't relate because they never learned how to be alone without feeling abandoned. You became proof that isolation was never punishment. It was preparation. It wasn't meant to end you. It was meant to introduce you to your power. Number 12, you don't compete, you create. You stopped chasing comparisons the moment you realized purpose doesn't have rivals. People stuck in competition mode believe life is a race, a desperate sprint for validation and visibility. But you learned that real power isn't about outrunning anyone. It's about building something only you can. While they're watching who's ahead, you're busy creating lanes that didn't exist before. That's why they can't stand you. Your focus exposes how distracted they are. Competition is rooted in fear, the fear of not being enough, not being seen, not being first. Creation, on the other hand, is rooted in confidence. You don't need to outshine anyone when you understand that your light has its own purpose. You're not trying to win because your journey doesn't operate by their scoreboard, and that frustrates them. They can't measure you, can't compare themselves to you, can't compete with something that's moving from vision, not vanity. They need rivalry to feel relevant. They feed on tension, gossip, and imitation. They watch your every move, not to learn, but to copy. Yet what they replicate lacks the spirit that birthed it. That's what burns them the most. You make things happen without trying to prove anything, while they exhaust themselves proving what they haven't actually built. You operate from abundance. You know that someone else winning doesn't threaten your success, because you understand the difference between inspiration and imitation. You don't chase trends, you set tone. You don't seek validation, you produce value. That's what separates you. And because of that, your peace disrupts their competition mindset. You're not playing their game, and that's why they feel powerless. They can't provoke you into jealousy or rivalry. You're too busy creating something real, while they're busy keeping score in a game that doesn't even matter. You don't compete because you know who you are. You create because you know why you're here. And that clarity, that refusal to engage in petty comparison, makes those who thrive on envy feel invisible in the light of your purpose. Number 13, you keep winning without their validation. There's a certain kind of fury that erupts when people realize their approval wasn't the gate to your success. They thought if they ignored you, discredited you, or shut you out of their circle, you'd crumble. They built invisible walls thinking it would keep you contained. But instead of begging for entry, you built your own door, and that's what drives them insane. You were never waiting for their stamp of legitimacy. You were waiting for your own breakthrough, and when it came, it didn't need their signatures. You flourished without their applause, and that broke the unspoken rule of dependency. They wanted you to believe they were essential to your progress, that you needed their connections, their compliments, their cooperation. But you proved that alignment with purpose is stronger than acceptance from people. You stopped seeking validation and started operating in conviction. Once you did, the same ones who dismissed you had to watch you rise in real time, powerless to stop it. What they call luck is really liberation. You detached from their approval system, and now they can't measure your worth anymore. Your success offends them because it exposes the illusion of their influence. They built their identity around being the deciders, the validators, the ones whose recognition supposedly makes others matter. But when you thrived without their permission, it revealed how irrelevant their opinions actually are. They're not mad that you won, they're mad that you did it without them. Your independence dismantled their importance. They can't claim credit, and that eats at them. Every time you accomplish something, it replays the truth. They never had the power they thought they did. That's why your success doesn't just inspire, it unsettles. You proved that validation isn't the source, vision is. You outgrew their system, and now they're left questioning how someone they tried to block found a way to bloom anyway. You didn't just win. You rewrote what winning looks like, and you did it without their permission slip. Number 14, you shine where they expected you to shatter. They didn't just doubt you, they counted on your collapse. They wanted to see you broken, embarrassed, or forgotten because it would have justified their envy. They needed you to fail so their mediocrity could feel safe again. But the same pressure that was supposed to destroy you became the catalyst for your glow-up. You didn't just survive what was meant to sink you. You evolved through it. And that evolution turned their predictions into proof that divine favor always overrides human expectation. Your resilience disturbs them because it breaks the logic of their hate. You weren't supposed to recover from that betrayal, that loss, that public humiliation, yet you did. and you came back stronger. They can't explain it, so they downplay it. They tell themselves you got lucky or found help, anything to avoid admitting that your spirit couldn't be conquered. They forget that when everything around you collapsed, you rebuilt from within. You learned how to create stability out of storms. They invested energy into your downfall, gossip, mockery, silent sabotage, and expected dividends of destruction. Instead, you came out glowing with peace, purpose, and power. That's why your existence annoys them now. Your light exposes how much time they wasted trying to dim it. They thought your breakdown would be your identity. Instead, it became your initiation. You shine not because life was kind, but because you learned how to extract wisdom from wounds. Every scar turned into strategy. Every setback became a stepping stone. You turned pain into prophecy, and now your presence reminds them that they never had the final say. That's what terrifies them. The realization that no amount of hate can cancel grace. You became living evidence that when you're chosen, even the fire that was meant to finish you ends up refining you. You shine where they expected you to shatter, because your resilience isn't rebellion, it's divine design. Every time you rise, it shakes the atmosphere of those who built their confidence on your silence. You weren't chosen because you were perfect. You were chosen because you had the courage to keep evolving when comfort begged you to stop. Every battle that tried to bury you became the soil that grew your strength. And now, your very existence is a contradiction to everything your haters believe about power. You didn't have to seek revenge. You became the proof. You didn't have to fight for recognition. Your growth did that for you. You simply kept walking through the fire until the flames became your light. The truth is, being a chosen one isn't about being liked. It's about being aligned. You were never meant to fit in with people who feed off confusion and comparison. You were meant to stand out by being consistent when others crumble. That's why they react to you with hostility. Not because you've wronged them, but because your evolution invalidates their excuses. You've become the evidence that transformation is possible, that strength can be silent, that peace can be loud, and that favor can't be faked. Everything they used to mock you for has now become the very thing they secretly admire. The same solitude they called loneliness became your sanctuary. The same pain they laughed at became your power source. You didn't win by becoming louder. You won by becoming unshakable. And now, they can't touch you, not because you built walls, but because you built wisdom. You no longer live to prove your worth. You live to protect your peace. That's the true victory of the chosen. Not fame, not revenge, but freedom. So if you've ever wondered why people react so strangely to your growth, it's because they can't reconcile the person they tried to break with the person you've become. You outgrew their expectations, you outlived their predictions, and now you outshine their projections. You are the story they'll have to rewrite again and again because your ending didn't go the way they planned. If this message resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more brutally honest truths like this. Like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of their power today. Your journey deserves to be seen, not for attention, but for impact. Keep rising, keep shining, and never apologize for being chosen. Stay blessed always.